and ask you all to rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Please join with me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And if I could ask you to stay standing for a moment of silence, kind of in recognition of two things. In this past week, we've lost one of the true icons of Fairfield and our community in terms of former Fire Chief Dave Russell, who, in reading his obituary, I was amazed not only how much he did for our fire department, but how much he did outside of that. And I think that, to me, is a continual reminder that our police and fire do so much more for our community than just their service, which is extremely important as it is, but they are so much more involved in helping our community be a better place. And then, out of respect that this is 9/11, that 12 years ago today, the World Trade Center and quite literally 3,000 people lost their lives. A number of them first responders, and I think this is a good time for our community. As we recognize this morning at the ceremony at the Fairfield Fire Department, to give special thanks to our first responders, our firefighters, our police, our emergency service workers, and to remember the men and women around the world who are serving our country and protecting the freedoms that we enjoy every day. All right, thank you. Let's see, going to the agenda. Normally we would have Wednesday's pet. Ms. Stenick had business that took her out of town, so she wasn't able to join us today. The Wednesday's pet program is something that former First Selectman and Selectman and longtime volunteer Sherry Stenick has continued since her time on this board, and she's had an amazing high percentage of pets that she's presented and shown at these meetings that have been adopted by our community. So we look forward to that every month, but we will pick that up again next month. We have a couple organizations that we want to give special recognition to, and there are a couple certificates that we want to hand out, and I'm going to take these one at a time. And first up, I'd like to, and we as a board would like to formally recognize Projects from the Heart. This is a thoughtful group of about 24 citizens who send care packages to our troops. And whereas following the events of September 11th, 2001, Pat Vita founded Project from the Heart in 2002 to make sure American troops are comforted in knowing that they have caring and thankful people back home supporting them. And whereas Project from the Heart volunteers meet every Thursday at our Savior's Lutheran Church to pack boxes filled with food, toiletries, pens, paper, and other items, these dedicated volunteers want to send a smile and measure of comfort to our troops. And whereas the volunteers fill about 20 boxes, which are sent to our military men and women stationed in Iraq and Afghanistan, one of the group's members comes up with a list of troops who will receive the package. And whereas each package has a note that reads, "Hello, we hope this package finds you out of harm's way. We are retired police wives and concerned Connecticut citizens. We want you to know that folks back home care for you and support you." And whereas over the years, there has been a lot of support from the community, those who come from military families, those with sons and daughters serving, or citizens who want to support our troops. And whereas since 2002, Project from the Heart has sent about 10,000 packages to America's troops and will continue to send them until all come home. Now therefore I, Michael C. Tetreau, First Selectman of the Town of Fairfield, do hereby proclaim September 11th, 2013 at Project from the Heart Day throughout the Town of Fairfield. Congratulations. Is there somebody from Project from the Heart that can come up here and give us a few more words on the organization and kind of how it got started?
A few thousand words. I didn't realize you were going to say so much about us. But I'll give it a whirl anyway. Good afternoon, Mr. Selectman and those in attendance. Thank you for this opportunity to tell us what help. Oh, I'm Shirley Sandbrook. I'm sorry, Project from the Heart, one of the...
Just so that our viewers at home know.
Oh, okay, sorry. Shirley Sambert, Project from the Heart. Thank you for this opportunity to tell you a little bit about Project from the Heart. We were summoned together shortly after 9/11 by Pat Vita, who has been our inspiration since day one. She is unfortunately too ill to be with us, but is certainly with us in spirit. For the first several years, we met and packaged at Pat's house until she could no longer see the walls in her living area. We started out as a group of Fairfield police wives, have lost a couple members and gained a few also. At this point, being in operation so long, each of us has kind of found their niche, and together we operate smoothly. Our Savior's Lutheran Church has graciously housed us for the last couple of years, and we store our supplies there, and from there, box every Thursday, barring anything unforeseen, and we try to send out a minimum of 20 boxes per week. We send packages to troops in Iraq and Afghanistan, and to date, as you say, we have sent out nearly 10,000. If you have a relative or a friend deployed to Iraq or Afghanistan, please give us his or her name, and we will gladly see that they get a box replete with goodies. The items we send are denoted on our flyers, which can be found in varied places throughout town and nearby areas. Sometimes soldiers will ask for certain items they do not have access to, and we always try our best to accommodate them. Many of them are in areas where supplies are limited or non-existent. It's gratifying to know we are bringing them some measure of comfort. This is a costly undertaking, but one which we do with pride and honor. Postage alone is close to $300 a week, and this past Monday I spent almost $300 on supplies because the coffers were very low. However, the letters of thanks we receive from the troops reduce us to tears and make it all worthwhile. They are extremely grateful. People from all walks of life, businesses, individuals, school groups, church groups, kids, and many others have generously donated to Project from the Heart, either financially or with supplies. It is through this generosity we are able to continue our commitment. We have had children celebrating birthdays who have requested donations for Project from the Heart instead of birthday presents. Just this past summer, one youngster set up a lemonade stand and turned over her profits to help the soldiers. We gladly accept donations, both financial and supplies. We are affiliated with Human Services Council of Norwalk in one respect only, and that is, under their aegis, checks made out to Project from the Heart are tax exempt. If a check is made out to a member, it is deposited into the checking account. This is a sobering thought. A soldier, a veteran, whether on active duty, retired, National Guard, or Reserve, is someone who at one point in their life wrote a check made payable to the United States of America for an amount up to and including my life. Just this past week, this has become a reality here in Connecticut, where we experienced the loss of one of our young men. That commitment is one that we should always honor and respect. In closing, I would like to read a very brief letter which sum up why we remain in existence and why we work so hard to bring a smile and measure of comfort to our troops. This is a Project from the Heart. What a name. My name is Brett Roberts, and on behalf of Chaplain Olson and the 321 IN soldiers, we want to thank you for all the packages that you sent. You are so awesome, and it's people like yourselves, along with our families, that keep us going. With all the thoughts and prayers that you send our way, we make sure all the soldiers feel them as much as we do. The chaplain and I are always traveling the battlefield, and we see the hurt, the sadness, and the tears that some soldiers feel. With the packages that you send, we are able to see the smiles and the happy oohs and ahs that they share. I want to share them with you as well. Again, thank you so much for everything, and please keep us in your thoughts and prayers as we travel through this journey of life that God has granted us. We truly thank you for this opportunity to give you a brief synopsis, sorry, not too brief, of Project from the Heart. These brave guys and gals are serving under very austere and frightening conditions, and we need to continue to send them love and support in a box from home. Several members' names and email addresses are on the flyers should any of you have questions or wish to donate. Mutually convenient arrangements can be made to always pick up the supplies. Thanks you once again, and remember to help. And I would like to acknowledge just our hardworking members that are here today. There's, if you'd like to say your own name, please.
Mary Lou Edwards, Lisa Tetreau.
Actually, it might work if you just repeat those after they say them.
Oh,
because
okay.
The mic won't pick them up as you're saying them from the audience.
Thank you, I'm sorry. Mary Lou Edwards, Lisa Patanovich, Betty Gunter, Shirley Petrino, Marilyn Henry, Donna D'Addario, Rosemary Romano, Jean Krasinski, Joey D'Addario, and our World War II veteran Alex Fusey. Thank you, everybody. I have flowers, should anyone have a friend, a relative, or anything.
If you can get those to our two cameramen.
Absolutely.
So that they can get those possibly edited on the screen. So
We
that
need
would
all
be
the
there.
help we can get, pass them
And-
out to everyone.
And Ms. Sandberg, if we can officially present this to you. guys.
Thank you. I'm really part of the team, frankly. Okay, thank you.
It's a-
Get that. Donna, if anybody wants, you guys over here? Yeah. Why don't we do this? Why don't we do this?
Do I have to like soft shoe or anything?
No,
or is
sure.
this-
Sure. All right, no. We'll get that to you. Okay.
Did you take it? Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you. This is
All right.
beautiful. Thank you all very much.
No, thank
On
you.
behalf of the team, thank you.
You know, being 9/11, it does bring an extra special meaning to all of this, and we have another proclamation and another group we'd like to represent that has also been supporting our troops. From the town of Fairfield, we'd like to proudly honor the Soldier Support Packages, which was launched in 2005 by Fairfield residents Michael and Carol Weinschel and Carol's sister, Dr. Susan Spivak, to send troops care packages. And whereas Soldier Support Packages started when the 159th Combat Aviation Brigade deployed to Iraq, this dedicated group of citizens continues to support our troops deployed in Afghanistan. And whereas since its inception, Soldier Support Packages adopted numerous brigades, including the 159th Combat Aviation Brigade, twice, from Fort Campbell, Kentucky, the 101st Combat Aviation Brigade, twice, also from Fort Campbell, Kentucky, the 82nd Combat Aviation Brigade, twice, Fort Bragg, North Carolina, the 117 Cavalry Squadron from Fort Bragg, North Carolina, the 3-17 Cavalry Support or Cavalry Squadron from Fort Stewart, South Carolina, and the 1st Combat Aviation Brigade, the 1st Infantry Division, Fort Riley, Kansas, a medical evac unit of helicopters, a hospital unit stationed in Iraq, and several special operations units. And whereas all groups receive packages throughout their deployments on a monthly basis, the big mailings take place at Christmas when each soldier receives an individually packed treat bag in cartons and sent to specific contacts provided. And whereas all groups receiving packages were names given to Soldier Support Packages by the previous commanders or known through the first commander, now a major general, or by the Weinschel's son, Lieutenant Colonel Matthew Weinschel. And whereas since 2005, Soldier Support Packages have adopted over 30,000 troops and are currently supporting another 3,000. And whereas Soldier Support Packages received awards presented by the 159th, including the Commander's Award for Public Service, this committed group has also received invitations to several military balls with tokens of appreciation presented. The National Association of State Boards of Accountancy presented the Being a Difference Award to this group for their efforts and living a life of not just making a difference, but being a difference. And whereas this project always sends the messages that we at home appreciate the soldiers, what the soldiers do, and in their outreach, the group always talks about the sacrifice these troops make, not to mention their family, what their families endure as well. Now therefore, I, Michael C. Tetreau, First Selectman of the Town of Fairfield, do hereby proclaim September 11th, 2013 as Soldier Support Packages Day throughout the town. Congratulations. Would you like to come up and say a few words, Ms. Weinschel?
Carol Weinschel, Fairfield, Connecticut. The proclamation pretty much says everything we've done, and I was going to prepare something talking about the project, and last night we read a reflection that our son wrote. Our son is stationed in Kandahar, and he is the Lieutenant Colonel, the commander of the 117 Cavalry Squadron, as part of the 1st Combat Aviation Brigade out of Fort Riley. And this is what he wrote, and I asked his permission to share. On this 9/11 anniversary, he wrote this to the troopers and families of the 16 Cav. On this 9/11 anniversary, take a moment to reflect on why we do what we do, often far from home and our families. It is always about maintaining our way of life and support to the ground force. Thank you for your service, sacrifice, and dedication to something much greater than yourself. This says it all. This is why we do what we do in supporting our soldiers. Personally, we've met the best of the best, and to them, we say thank you. They are the ones who deserve the praise, and they say it goes to someone else. Like our heroes, we say the very same thing. We are humbled by your recognition, and we are honored to serve. We've done this since 2005. It started out with, okay, Colonel Colt, we're going to take care of you, when he took 2,800 soldiers to Iraq. He said, you don't know what you're getting into. And I said, you don't know who I am. You might, because you know our son. And from October in 2005 until Christmas, my sister and I shopped, packed, bagged, wrapped, and went to the post office, and each of his 2,850 soldiers had an individually wrapped treat bag filled with something for Christmas. And so it went. Were we going to continue? Were we going to stop? There was no way. Mike did the dragging, he did the moving, the loading of the car, and he always knew where to find me in the playroom at home. Packing at 2 o'clock in the morning, it was just the two of us. So that's what we did. And we didn't know it was going to take on a life of its own, but how could you not continue when we got those notes? The notes that said, thank you, do you know how much a tube of toothpaste means? So we continued, and we continued, and we continued through all of those brigades. The brigades that received the packages twice must be saying, we've seen those bags before. You know, there are only so many kinds of treat bags with balloons and cars and trucks and whatever. We recognize those people. And so we did. And they've received the packages more than once. Once in Iraq, once in Afghanistan. And then we did special operations. And special operations was a very funny thing because when we met some of those folks, they said to us, we never get mail. That's not for us to get. And when we went to the mailroom and saw boxes lined up, the small mailing boxes, with stuff for them, they said, we thought it was for somebody else because the other people deserved it. We didn't need, we didn't deserve. They always know they can share. That's what the message. There's always a flyer in a box that has some 20 or 20 individually wrapped packages. We send to the commander, we send to the command sergeant major. We say they're always for sharing. Give to who doesn't get or give to who you need. And so that's what we do. Like I said in the lobby when I talked to you folks, our middle son was in Iraq, and you didn't know us. You sent him a package, and some of you, and that's why I asked if Miriam was here, some of you were at our welcome home party for him. He was delighted that somebody from Fairfield would remember him. He was an Army dentist. The was is not because he isn't. The was is because he's not in the Army anymore. He's a pediatric dentist. But that's how we met you, and it's a tribute to you folks, what you do. I really and truly, nobody knows what you do unless you do it yourself, and we sure do. And you're really wonderful, and your name says it all. So, like I said, it took us 8 years to come up with a name. Who had time? I didn't have time to think of a name or to be, do a fancy flyer or anything, and so we came up with a name. And I have to think about it, many times before I can say it, soldier support packages. And we have a blog now. We're on the web. It's not that I don't know how to do technology, but I didn't have time, or how to use technology, and created a Shutterfly book. Our flyer has a link. The book is in the car. You can tell. I didn't think to bring the book in, but the book is there. That's what we use. We show people, we tell people these folks just need our support. They don't need anything else. And if anybody asks about the politics, I'm not interested. I'm not interested in discussing. I'm only interested in saying thank you, know that we care, and we're here for you. And so soldier troop packages will continue as long as there's a need. Thank you so much.
If we can formally present you this proclamation. Mike, do you want to come and join us here? Let's get, why don't we get you two guys in the middle? Right in front. I'll get on this side. And there we go. And good, thank you. Thank you. Oh, one more, got one more? Hold it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Would you like to?
Oh, please, thank you, Mr. Tetreau. On this day, when we reflect and honor the 3,000-plus people who perished on 9/11, and we show our support and our honor for the troops that serve abroad, protecting our freedoms and our country, and we continue to do that every day. It is just an honor for me to be in the room with the two groups of you folks who have taken your time and your energy to support our troops over all these years by sending them packages and information, but most importantly, support and love, so that they know there are people back here that care about them, that think about them, and that are doing little things, big things for them every day. The spirit, the courage that you show doing that every day, every week, every year is a true reflection upon every one of you, but it's also a reflection upon the spirit of Fairfield, and is what makes our town such a wonderful place to be. And I am just proud to be in this room amongst you, and thank you very much for all your efforts.
Saying thank you just doesn't seem like quite enough, and it's amazing. All of you have said thank you through your actions. You've shown it through what you've done, and that to me is just an amazing gift. I think the thing that I was thinking about as I was listening to both of the presentations was that our troops who are abroad, they are, we expect, kept out of harm's way through their command, their chain of command, and that's the job, is they keep each other safe physically over there. But that human connection can save lives as well, and it's so important. And the sense of connection that each one of you has given to them is an amazing gift and a lifeline. And I want to thank you. Again, those words just don't seem like enough today, but I do thank you for all that you've done. We're very fortunate and blessed, as are the troops over there, so thanks so much.
Thank you. And in agreement with my two colleagues, I also want to mention that my brother is currently serving in Afghanistan. And one of the good things is that we do get emails back and forth in terms of how he's doing. And through his 2 tours in Afghanistan, his 2 tours in Iraq, he's always been very appreciative of the gifts from home and things that come in. I would mention that right now, as we're starting to cut back on troops and starting to see, if you will, the light at the end of the tunnel, one of the things that as I read his emails, it gets cut back first, are the personal supplies and the PXs and the other support things. So the support that you're doing is more important now to the troops over there than perhaps it's been at any other time. And I want to thank you for continuing your efforts and, as the comment was made, not giving up on that and not forgetting them until they're all home. So thank you again, and thank you for representing our town and our community so well. All right.
Thank you. Can we put the links on the website, or do we have them? Is it possible?
I don't know,
Think about
certainly is. Mr. Kiley just asked if we can put your links on the website, town website, and we can certainly try to do that. I think if you would be good enough to forward those to Jen Carpenter in the First Selectman's office, and we'll see if we can get those up as part of that to kind of do our part to help you in your efforts in doing that. All right. And again, thank you very much all for showing up today and giving us a chance to share your efforts with our entire town. Back to the meeting at hand, and the less exciting part of this. Next up is minutes, to consider and act upon the minutes of the regular meeting of August 21st, 2013. Do I have a motion to accept?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
And I should mention to the folks that are here, you're welcome to stay as long as you find the rest of this interesting, but don't feel compelled to stay through the rest of the meeting if you have other more important things to do.
Thank you.
All right, any comments or changes on the minutes?
The only question I had, and I think it's good, when Selectman McCarthy Vahey was going through all the changes in section 5, did we get all of them in there as we wanted them?
Yes,
I was
believe
making
so.
notes along the way, but I didn't catch everything.
I had also provided in writing
Okay.
those that I had
Okay.
said out loud
Okay. I just-
to Jen, so yes, thank you.
Good, thank you.
Anything further?
No.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. All right, next up, given where we are in looking at the Penfield building project and Penfield Pavilion and what's taking place, I thought it might be good to just catch us up and also have a bit of a discussion about what the best approach might be from here in terms of a process moving forward. And as a brief catch-up, obviously, the Penfield Pavilion had significant damage during Storm Sandy. We had put an allocated amount of money in the non-recurring budget, which was approved last January and February by the Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance, and RTM. At the time, that was looked to be what I'll call a focused repair project. We brought in engineers. We got specific engineers that were focused on coastal areas, what takes place during that, what is needed, and we asked them a number of questions. One, what happened? What needs to be done to restore the pavilion? What the options are in terms of what steps can we take to minimize the likelihood of this happening in the future? And are there any design issues that we should address as we go through that? We had an update meeting both before this board in June and then before the Parks and Rec Board in July, and then before the public at Ludlow a couple weeks ago. We've got a certain amount of feedback from that. As you're aware, the engineers have identified 3 possible options. During the comments from the public, there was a 4th option that was identified, which is should we build it smaller as opposed to bigger or replacing the same structure. And I think that in listening to the comments, listening to the concerns, the other point was that whatever we do, we should make sure that it's integrated into or comprehended in the larger flood mitigation plan for the whole beach area, which is another project that is underway as we're looking at that. So I thought it would be both appropriate for this board to sit down and discuss how we proceed from here, just to kick that off for purposes of discussion. It seems like we've gone beyond the scope of just repairing it, that there's some other decisions to do that have financial implications as we go through that. It also seems that, unlike a school building project, where the goal is to build a school or renovate or expand that school, and the scope is pretty well defined by the Board of Education and the ed specs that come through, we really have some questions that need to be answered in terms of how we address this, what we do from a community standpoint, and how we address the needs of the community and going forward with this. So, if we did a charge for a building committee like this, we would in fact kind of have a two-part charge. What should we do? And then kind of managing that project to completion. So with that as a intro, I guess I would open it up to any comments from my colleagues as to where you'd like to start this discussion or where you'd like to go with this.
Well, just a clarifying point. Our agenda item is a discussion on the reestablishment of the Penfield Building Committee. So really, this is a process discussion today about what steps we, as a board, think are prudent in terms of moving forward with this project, and how we're gathering that input, as you said, for part one, and then two, how any project is being managed.
Correct. The outcome might be a consensus by this board that we want to have a building committee put together. That would lead to development of a charge, subject to the approval of this board at a future meeting. Also would lead to us going out and reaching out to the public to see if there would be folks out there that would like to serve and participate on this building committee.
Okay. Do you see the committee, I think if I heard you correctly, you see the committee as serving both purposes, both the definition of what will be built there at some point, and then further to that, the actual monitoring of that process itself? Or
That was my thinking so far.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
If it was proposed we split that up, that wouldn't certainly be impossible. I think that based on what we know now, it seems that whatever we're doing, I think we had somewhere between $1 million and $1.5 million put in the non-recurring authorization to spend. Of that, the anticipation was that most of that would be covered by our insurance, that there's a $500,000 deductible, the town would pay the first $500,000, the balance would be covered by insurance. Given that's what's been approved for us to spend, and we need to do both things, we need to have authorization to spend as well as look at just the net impact on the town. It looks like the cost to repair the pavilion are higher than the amount that we initially approved. So it's going to have to come back through the boards, Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance, and RTM, to approve a larger amount to spend. Even if the town is still only obligated for the $500,000, it would still have to come back through the boards. One of the other questions that came up is that if the town didn't do anything or built something smaller, it appears that based on our current understanding and talks with the insurance company, that we would be able to get a settlement check back from them for whatever the estimate of the damage was over and above our deductible. So the committee would have some things to do in terms of evaluating that.
So should we focus this discussion on like specific questions? Because I obviously have questions about insurance and you know what the options are and the timing of whatever we might do, or should we keep the focus on the process and the committee? So I just don't want to step over the line of the item.
I think the idea of identifying questions would be very helpful, and if nothing else, could be either incorporated into the charge or attached to those, if that was the consensus of this board that we should go ahead and do that.
I guess that's part of why I asked the clarification. It seems to me, though, to first have some conversation about how it goes forward, because when I was thinking about this agenda item, you know, what are the options? That we have no building committee, we have a building committee. If we don't have a building committee, then how does this process move forward?
Right.
What role do various town bodies or our town department heads play in that? And when I was thinking about this, certainly we have had some level of public input to this point. I think that that's an important piece. I think the benefit of a building committee is that you have public meetings that are focused on the specific topic and that allow the public to come, that are noticed, that are where there's public comment. That's clearly a benefit as opposed to, asking our Department of Public Works to just simply manage the project and move forward with something that we've decided, which clearly would also be at a public meeting.
That makes perfect sense. I mean, it does make sense to have some type of committee to begin the process. Whether it's that first step of deciding what to do and getting all that input and all those questions answered and all that information from the various parties and figuring that out, managing that process, and coming up with a decision to therefore go to the town bodies. And then I guess if that same committee is so inclined or the members are still on the committee, they can move ahead with, I guess, phase 2, which is actually putting the building on the ground.
As you're saying that, I'm thinking about our education projects and the kind of 2 tracks that we've had in the past. We have how we were doing the process where the building committee was formed and there were ed specs, and then there was a conversation and coming up with that dollar amount process in that way. Now we have a newer system that we used for Ludlow that the scope was a little more defined and specific. So that's another question I would have about this, which speaks to Selectman Kiley's point in terms of those 2 pieces, which one is almost the first piece of the committee, or whatever body it would be, is some scope definition. And then the second piece, the actual carrying out the project, so.
Yep, and perhaps part of the scope definition we're going through, and one of the things that we are currently sitting down with the insurance adjusters, much like every resident or every building in the beach area, every home that got damaged, is you sit down and say, okay, what's the estimated damage, what does it take to get it fixed, what will the insurance cover, and there's a certain, it's not as black and white as it sounds, there's a certain amount of negotiation. The critical factor in that is whether there was more than 50% damage to the structure or not.
Okay.
Currently, as we're adding up the costs, it appears that we will not reach that factor, though there is a rationale that says maybe it's more than that. So we're in the process of that negotiation with the insurance adjusters and with our engineers, looking at what it takes to do that. If we're less than 50%, we have options in terms of what we do. If we're more than 50%, then we would fall into the category if we're going to maintain the structure, we have to make it FEMA compliant. The town is not an exception. We have to meet all the FEMA rules that every homeowner in the beach area does.
Right.
So we still have those same obligations. We have the same FEMA guidelines, the 50% rule, raising it so far above sea level if we choose to raise it, to do that. So we don't get to skip out on those. We're not an exception in any way.
Right.
As we heard, the FEMA rule, the FEMA heights have changed and the FEMA flood zones have changed. So if we're over 50% damaged, to meet the FEMA guidelines, there'd have to be a significant height adjustment, as we heard during our June presentation.
Right.
And again, initially, if you think back to the Storm Irene damage, that's what I would call more of a repair function. We didn't have a separate non-recurring or capital project. We didn't need a separate building committee. We were able to make those adjustments and repairs to the project and do them within the annual operating budget. This was a more significant repair, certainly, and as we've learned in our updates, a much more significant project than we initially anticipated. So that's the reason for going back, looking at different options, and thinking that in order to have that discussion in public, in order to make that really a community discussion and available for everybody to comment on, that a building committee might be the best forum to do that.
Well, I'm certainly agreeable to a committee that could do the work and get the process going and hopefully manage both pieces of it and, get the pavilion, rebuilt or built or whatever it takes. so that we can, have a pavilion for next spring or whenever it's done. I think the biggest concern I have heard repeatedly from many citizens is, we're coming up on the anniversary of this, and we still have a building with boards on it and fences around it, and seemingly nothing has happened to change that. So I would be very much in favor of, putting the right committee in place to get the process moving, but very much in favor of getting the process moving so that we can, figure out what we can do, what we want to do, what we're going to do, and get it done. Because it's time to do that. So.
I am also in favor of the committee idea. I think what I haven't settled on so much in my mind, and I think bears further conversation here, perhaps today or perhaps as we move forward, if we're doing a committee with the charge, is that kind of that type of process I was talking about. Perhaps we don't have to, and I'm using the Board of Ed as the parallel, perhaps we don't have to go quite as far as we did with the Ludlow process, but that at least that building committee would have a sense of direction, because certainly, as we know from the past process with school projects, if a building committee is coming back with something that the town bodies just aren't prepared to support in any way, we want to be realistic with any committee that we ask to spend time doing that. So I think in whatever charge that we were to provide as much direction while allowing for that input and comment, I think is critical. But I agree. I know it does take time to gather the right committee of people, and certainly people who, we have a lot of great volunteers and who have the time and the right expertise and perspectives, the various perspectives. So I think, to me, the idea of putting together a committee is prudent, and I'm in
Yeah,
favor.
I think if you look at the process, we're at a point where, and Mr. Kiley, you're correct in terms of, we've taken a certain amount of time to get here. That was, in fact, if you look at the steps, initially getting the funding approved to get started, then getting out with an RFQ to get the engineering firms on board to evaluate where we are and what options are possible, then getting back to our board, the Parks and Rec, and to the neighborhood groups and the citizens to kind of see where we are and lay out some of the options. I think it's prudent at this point to start a building committee process simply because we've got enough of a foundation to offer them. We may not have all the specs laid out and the options narrowed down, but we've got a number of options identified that can be evaluated. We're in the process of sorting out the insurance issues in terms of how much we get and what the rules are there, and then we'll be able to look at some potential, though less likely, FEMA money that may come from that, and sooner or later evaluate both the options against what the financial issues are for the town. What's the least cost option versus what might be best in the long run? And maybe those are the same, but perhaps not. And I think that, to me, is where getting the building committee involved now lets them get up to speed on those issues, understand the rationale, and if they can be the same group that carries it forward, then we don't have to transfer that knowledge, that they understand what the issues are, and as things come up, we get the benefit of the learning curve they've had going through the different options.
A couple things. In terms of the town building committee, that with the Board of Ed side, and I know I keep going to this because that's, when we talk about building committees, that's our primary experience. There are state statutes that define. We were talking about the troops here, and I think chain of command and communication process, I think, will be very important to outline for this group too. And I think that's something that, as we're talking about putting together a building committee, that it's clear for them how the communication happens between Public Works and the engineers and the building committee, and how that process works is, I think, very important, that it's very clear up front. I also just, this is maybe, I may be out of order here in terms of the item, so feel free to rein me in on that. But when we look at the options, you mentioned before that we need to look at it in a comprehensive way in terms of a broader flood mitigation issues, all those, the broader pieces that need to be addressed in the beach area that we know need to be addressed. I also hope that we as a town can look at our short-term immediate needs as well as the long-term piece as well, and that the committee would weigh those pieces, you know, both from, certainly from an economic standpoint, also from an environmental standpoint. And I think that's what we've been saying throughout this.
Yeah, just to clarify, the focus of this group would not be to develop, prepare, or approve, or prioritize a flood mitigation plan for the beach area,
Right.
but rather to make sure that as that initiative is going forward, that in fact the beach, the impact of any Penfield development on the flooding would be consideration. To make sure we understand what took place during Storm Sandy. One of the few silver linings of Storm Sandy is that it was significant enough that we get a chance to see where our flood mitigation program works and where it doesn't work. We have a chance to see what needs improvement. We have a chance to look at what happened in the Penfield area. Regionally, that's not the only thing that impacts flooding the beach area, but we want to make sure that whatever we're doing there improves the flood mitigation, that does its part to protect the neighborhood. That alone won't stop the flooding, certainly. There, you know, it's a much broader issue than that, and it wouldn't be fair to this committee to tax them with addressing that whole issue. We've got a separate initiative planned for that. But I think it's important that is one of their priorities, one of the items in their charge, if you will, to look at doing what they can with this project to help with the flood mitigation in that area.
How far along is the flood mitigation committee work or process at this point? Are they way ahead of the curve, or where are they in their work?
Let's see, there's 1, 2, 3 components of that, so let me start. One, we started that with DPW, with engineering, to look at what, and with conservation, and to look at what worked, and frankly, what didn't in our current setup. And specifically, let me pick on, we know there was an issue with one of the floodgates. We know that we were able to, it was, as Murphy's Law would have it, broke at the time Storm Sandy came in. We were able to close that. That helped keep the water out. It made it impossible to open it, to let the water back out into the sand. Now that, in and of itself, didn't cause any major delay. In and of itself, it didn't cause any major extensive flooding. There were so many different ways that water came in through the marina, through the marshes, through the Fairfield Beach property, through other areas, including Penfield. But we know that we have to do something with floodgates, and we're looking at, and that was one of the items identified in the non-recurring piece that we can look at, improving that and getting different floodgates. And so part of that evaluation is under place. We have gone out to explore what other towns are doing. And I think I've related to this board that we made a trip down to Stanford to look at literally what $1 billion will get you in terms of flood protection, in terms of their extensive dike system, their extensive pumping stations. And that gave us a chance to look at, do we put in place certain permanent pumping stations, and if we did that, where would we put those in? How would that help? We know that the dike along South Pine Creek became very close to being breached, and that could impact 500 to 1,000 homes north of there if that was breached. So the issue is, what can we do about increasing the height of the dike to provide further protection, especially given, by all projections, that sea levels are going to continue to rise. So that Storm Sandy coming back in a few years would be higher than Storm Sandy today. So we have to look at that, and then it has impacts in terms of what does that do to private property? How much cooperation can we get in terms of, because of the densely packed population in the beach area, pretty much anything we do is going to have an impact on private property to some degree. So it then looks at what options, what are folks willing to tolerate, and what are the trade-offs? At some point, we're sitting down saying, how likely is it we're going to have another Storm Sandy? And how soon would that be, and what's the financial impact of that? And at some point, what price are we willing to pay? So that whole part, to simply answer your question, Mr. Kiley, we're in the process of starting that. We're going to look at bringing on possibly an engineering consultant to help address more of that and provide a little bit more expertise. That is not, as much as there were a few, for lack of a better term, quick fixes I know we need to do because certain things are just broken.
Right.
That doesn't address the flood mitigation plan or the hazard mitigation plan. Cristin, I think you were able to sit in on our workshops we had with the
Right.
Nature Conservancy. Kevin, I know you weren't able to do that. We are going to have some other public sessions so we can give you a chance to catch back up on some of that.
Sure.
But we talked through a lot of the different things we need to protect, everything from the waste treatment control facility to roadways to the downtown to Riverside. If we weren't as lucky as we were during Storm Sandy, as strange as that is to say, we didn't have the rain. The winds actually came offshore, which helped protect us and keep the water from coming as far as it did. What if the winds were coming on? What if the rains came in? What if the riverways were overflooded? What if the flood waters that we had were compounded by rainwater coming in? All of that could have been much worse. So we've looked at our comprehensive flood mitigation plan needs to look at all of that. That's what the Greater Bridgeport Regional Council is really helping us do to put together. I just got an email that I'll circulate out.
May I share that, actually?
If you have
The
it.
public service announcement, actually,
Go right
that we
ahead.
just got today. And it's the Greater Bridgeport Regional Council updating the Regional Natural Hazard Mitigation Plan, and there will be a public information meeting on Thursday, September 19th at 6 PM in the Board of Ed conference room. So that's another continuation of that, which is great. So thank you. I just wanted
Good
to
timing.
get that info out there.
And the specific purpose of that is to get more public feedback, given how far we've gotten. We got a group of about 30 stakeholders together from various organizations, both the school district, the town, certain nonprofits, clergy, really reaching out to a broad base, the different beach area network groups, Fairfield Beach Residents Association, Fair Acres. So it was really good in terms of the cross-section of people we got, certain members of the RTM. And I thought that was a very good, almost 2-day discussion we had along those lines. They're now coming back to report on this. This will feed into building a hazard mitigation plan for the town of Fairfield. They are actually helping each of the towns in their jurisdiction to do this, but we're focused on the Fairfield component. That will let us meet certain requirements we need to meet for the state to make available additional funding for our beach area residents, and also let us participate in the community rating system. We'll let our residents get a 5 to 10% discount on their flood insurance. When you look at what's taking place with flood insurance in terms of those rates going up so high, this should help do that.
Great. Thank you for the update. I do appreciate that.
So anyway, to get closure on that, whatever we do at Penfield, I think needs to realize that flooding takes place. What are we doing to make sure that whatever we put in that stretch of beach does its best to protect the
Yeah.
neighborhood within reason? And that's part of the comprehensive approach, even though this group isn't responsible for that comprehensive approach.
Right. Got it. Thank you.
Anything further on?
No, it sounds like
Thank you
we
for
were-
bringing your high-tech notepad there. So
Yeah,
you go.
my 3.5-year-old. It works.
All right.
Right.
So I guess what I was looking for direction and closure on and consensus from the board is that this is a reasonable approach, that we should go ahead and look at drafting up something of a charge and look at it going to the public and asking for participation of building committee to let this board then pick up where we normally would. Normally, this would be something that we'd get from, to use your education example, the Board of Ed would
Right.
typically be sending us a letter saying, please form a building committee.
Right.
In essence, this is our discussion telling us, let's agree to form a building committee, and it gives us time to think about, if you will, the two-part charge.
Right.
My thinking at the moment is that it makes sense to do that as one big charge and keep the group together. But we could certainly do it in 2 parts, and I would encourage us to think about that and see kind of how that settles in with us.
I would agree with that, and maybe 2 components of one charge is better said than 2 parts, which would make
Agreed.
the reader think it's separate and distinct.
Great.
Yeah.
So
And-
Agreed.
I think that's good.
And certainly, going back to the boards after part 1 would be part of the charge, so that at
Right.
some point, everybody get a report on where we are, what it looks like, and what takes place. Along those lines, we'll have gotten further cost information from our DPW group in terms of what the different options cost.
Right.
We'll have gotten further questions resolved with our insurance company in terms of what takes place there. We'll have a chance to explore more of the FEMA options, though I'm not optimistic about those, but explore more of the FEMA options in terms of any additional funding that might be available along those lines. All right, so if that's consensus of the board, then we'll go ahead and draft some of that up and get that on an upcoming agenda as timely as possible, as you suggested.
Please, thank you.
All right, any further discussion on Penfield at this point?
No.
All right,
Good.
thank you. Next up, to consider and act upon tax refunds as recommended by the tax collector in the amount recommended. May I have a motion to accept?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
Right. Do we need to specify the amount?
I move to amend, which I think we will need to do each time so that we can include the amount. So simply to add on, comma, $15,333.27.
Second.
All right. Any comments on the amendment? Any amendment only? Any comments from the public on the amendment? Any amendment only? Back to the board. We ready to vote?
Yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, the item as amended stands before us. Any further discussion?
No.
Any further discussion or comments from the public? Seeing none, back to the board. Are we ready to vote?
Okay,
Mhm.
yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you.
Oops.
That's done. We'll get some kind of second. Here, consider and act upon any communications. There are none that I'm aware of. To hear and consider and act upon any other business that should probably come before this meeting. There's none at this time. May I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you all.
All right.
Thank you.